Hey guys, welcome back to the Clone Trooper DC-17 blaster pistol build. If you haven't already, go ahead and check out part 1. I walk through all the steps of like cutting the foam and gluing it together. In this video, we're just going to be finishing up the build. We're going to be sealing the foam with Mod Podge and then painting over it. I'm just going to use acrylic paint because it's faster than just spray painting it. But as you can see right now, I have to first put on the little detail pieces. This first piece just goes on the bottom side of the blaster. It's just a long strip of 5mm foam, and I will just glue it on using super glue because it's a smaller piece. It doesn't really need a whole lot to hold it on. I cut the piece a little bit too long, and that's on purpose. I just wanted to make sure the gap between the barrel and this little piece was pretty small, so I just cut it to the length that I wanted, as you saw in the video, and it fits in place pretty well. The next piece that we're going to make is the trigger guard. This piece I'm making out of 2 sections of 5mm foam. Once again, I'm just using AndrewDFT's template, and this is the part that I cut out separately, just like he does in his video. So this next piece is something that I had to make myself. It wasn't actually on the template, which is totally fine. This is the trigger section of the blaster, and if you want to add this in, it's totally fine. I think it looks a lot better, but if you're going to a convention with this or something like that, then you may not be allowed to have a trigger on your blaster, even if it's fake. The convention that I went to a while ago with my DC-17 rifle that I made, I had a trigger on that one, and I didn't have any issues at all, but your area might be a little different. If not, you could just make it detachable with some magnets or something like that. To attach the trigger and the trigger guard to the blaster, I'm just going to use super glue since I only need a little bit in one spot. This works probably the best. You'll probably want to attach the trigger part first just because it's easier to get in, and then put the trigger cover around that. You probably would have a difficult time doing it with the trigger guard first and then the trigger second. And it's looking pretty good so far. All we need to do now is add the little detail pieces on the sides of the gun and on the top. So for this side panel section, I'm just going to use super glue again. This is why I marked out those sections on the template earlier onto the foam, because this will give me a guide on where to glue this in. As you can see, those little black marks around the edges. So now it's time to glue in those 3 little bars right above that line we just glued in. This is a pretty distinctive part of this blaster. It really stands out as the defining feature on this gun, I would say. So you want to make sure that the 3 little pieces are all lined up. I kind of messed up on one of them and I had to trim it down a little bit, but in the end it turned out perfectly fine. So don't be afraid if yours isn't perfect. So after gluing on the parts on the other side of the gun, exactly the same as I just did, next we're going to glue on this top piece. It's kind of like a sight maybe, but this is done using the exact same 5mm foam that I used for all the other white parts on the gun. So that's pretty much the completed build of the blaster. The next thing I'm going to do is pretty much optional, I would say. I'm just going to fill in some of the cracks at the front of the barrel and the back of the barrel. So after the spackling dries, next we're just going to coat the entire blaster in Mod Podge. This will seal in the foam and provide an extra layer on top of the foam, so where you can paint the blaster. Another type of famous sealer for foam cosplay or props is Plastidip. This is a spray-on kind, similar to spray paint. However, Mod Podge is much cheaper and much simpler, and if you're just doing a small project, this is probably what you'll use, as you don't want to use the expensive stuff for this. The only downside to Mod Podge is that it can sometimes leave brush marks if your brush has like thick bristles, so make sure you're using a brush that doesn't leave brush marks. Okay, so now that we've let that dry, it's all hard, but the overall shape of the blaster is still there. There's nothing really changed. There's just a thin layer of Mod Podge that dried over top of the foam. It doesn't really feel spongy anymore. That's really the only difference. So now I'm going to go ahead and start painting. I'm just using some black acrylic paint to brush it on. I wanted to make this very simple and quick. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time painting and waiting for it to dry over and over. So just a few coats of black acrylic paint, and that's all I really did. So after I let that dry for a few minutes, it's basically ready to pick up. Of course, as you can see, it's all black right now, and none of the detail pieces really stand out all that much. So what I'm going to do is take some gray paint and just brush it over top and cause a weathering effect. I'm just going to spray some of this paint onto a paper towel and then wipe it on. There's no need for it to be nice and neat because it's supposed to be weathered, which is all random. You don't want to put any like spots on the blaster though. You want to try to make it look like scars or slashes across the blaster. If it's used by a clone captain or commander, it's probably been through quite a lot. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up this build. My current plan is to build a second one. and then I'm going to make holsters for them and possibly attach them to my clone costume. So stick around for that if you'd like to see that. Once again, I put the link in the description to where you can get this template. And thanks to AndrewDFT for the free template. I really enjoyed building this blaster. It was very simple and easy. It only took me about 2 days to complete it, so you can easily do this one yourself. And don't worry about accuracy, because it's supposed to be just for fun. Mine certainly isn't perfect in every way, but I'm satisfied with it. I think it looks really good, and it will make a nice addition to my clone costume collection. I won't deny that some of the aspects of this build are a little complicated, like putting the PVC pipe in the middle, but it's certainly small enough so that if you make a mistake, you don't have to be too upset about wasting materials. So definitely give this one a shot if you'd like a smaller project to do on the side, and check out my other builds if you'd like to do one of those as well. So lastly, thank you to my Patreon supporters, and I'll see you guys in the next video.